everyone. Welcome to Conversations on Social Work Careers. My name is Jennifer Luna, and I'm your social work career coach with the new Social Worker magazine. But I am not the only social work career coach. Today, we have the fabulous Nicki Sanders, who is a career coach, but also a leadership coach, and has many other interests that I follow, and was really excited about having her on the show today. So with that, I want to introduce you to Nikki. And Nikki, just start by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for the invitation, Jennifer. I'm excited to be here. Yes, I am a social work career coach. I specialize in working with high-performing women of color in social work leadership, but that does not mean that anyone else is excluded. That means that I have just a little bit of extra support for a group of women who don't always have that support in the workplace. I've been in the social work profession for over a decade with my master's degree. I've been in leadership for about 15 years. I am really, really excited about being here and really passionate about really bringing to light all of the opportunities and possibilities that the social work profession offers.
That's why it's so hard to pick a niche with
Yes,
clients, right?
definitely.
I find that so amazing, because when we go into social work, we hear of all these great jobs that we could do, and we could do all of them.
Yep.
But when it comes to picking a niche, that becomes a little overwhelming. And
It
so
definitely is.
I'm glad that you acknowledged that in the beginning. What made you choose a career in social work in the first place?
Yeah, so as a first generation college student, I really did well in high school, and I was the person that everybody told their issues and problems to, right? So good listener, problem solver. By the time I got to senior year, I was like social worker, teacher, because honestly, those were the only two professions that I really was aware of. Um, and in my senior year, I was working as a tutor, so getting into that education field a little bit. And my program decided to take on a holiday project for teen moms in foster care. And I was like, that's it. I'm going into social work. That's the thing. So it was that holiday project for teen moms in foster care that really made me make the decision to go into social work, really to support teen moms in foster care. That was my goal, and I've really done that in my career. But because I have this master's degree in social work, I've actually been able to pursue both education as a professor and social work. So, and again, one of the things that I love about social work is that diversity.
And I really like the fact that you dug deep to identify your brand.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I've been working on with myself, and trying to explore that with my clients. Is a lot of times we think our brand starts after we get our degree,
Right.
or when we start working, but it really goes so much further than that. And the fact that you recognize that since high school
Yeah.
is just amazing. And you've followed that path the whole way.
I definitely did follow that path the whole way. Along the way, though, I did try some things that I thought I would like that I did not. I went into social work with the intention of working in, really not even working in, building, leading a residential program for teen moms in foster care. When I got my first job out of undergraduate, working with teen moms in foster care in a residential facility, I realized that was not the thing that I wanted to do, that I wanted to support them in a different way. After that, when I started doing home visits, I moved from residential to community work and doing home visits. I realized home visits was not the thing that I wanted to do, that I could support them in a different way. And I just kept going really with that population, teen moms, young moms in general, some in foster care, not in foster care. And I've been able to use those skills. But the one thing that I've always done is followed that inkling in that moment And if I change my mind, I just allowed myself to change my mind. I have all those skills, I have all those experiences in my toolbox, and I use them to build for the next thing.
How did you do that? How did you give yourself permission to change your mind?
That's a good question. I think some of it is my own personality, but I think also being an older sister, oldest daughter, really having the responsibility and making decisions that I always felt comfortable making decisions. And so I just let that translate into my professional life because I had been in leadership roles, right, in the family, right,
Yeah.
in my personal life. So I use those same skills, ideas in my personal life. And it really was about being who I am authentically and saying, I've learned from this and it's okay. And I can now go on to the next thing because it was all leading to where I wanted to go. It was still on the same path. Um, so I like to talk about my career path as connecting the dots, right? So I've had that straight, this is the goal, but there were many twists and turns along the way. And so what I encourage both my students and my clients to do is figure out what they want to do right now. It's not forever. It can be just right now. And right now it can be 3 months, 3 years, but right now, and give yourself permission to grow and learn and change. And it's better to try it and not like it than to not try it and have that regret.
And what would be, how do you help your clients to pivot?
Absolutely. I think for me, I use strategic career management. That is the framework that I use. And there are three pillars: clarity, credibility, and congruency. And so I start a lot with clarity. What do you want? What do you not want? What have you done? What do you want to do more of? So getting clear, I think oftentimes can be a challenge because we love so many things.
Right.
And sometimes it's easier to figure out what we don't want than what we do want. And that's okay too. We can start there. And so how I really help my clients pivot is really honing in on what would you do if you knew success was literally the only option. You absolutely could not fail. If money were no object, what would you do if you had a genie who could wave a magic wand? And really try to get people to dream big, because I think those limits that we have put on ourselves, that society has put on us, really kind of keeps us stuck, right? Like, you went to school for this thing, you have to keep doing it. And that's not the case. And so having my clients to not just get clarity about where they want to go, but where they've been. What I found is that a lot of women in general don't always um, take ownership of all of the great things that they have done. Our education, our skills, our experience, we kind of downplay it a little bit, really taught to be humble. Um, and so that doesn't always translate well into the workplace, because if you don't speak up, who will know the work that you're doing? And so I really try to get clear on what it is that you want, but also what it is you would do if no one else was watching, if no one had any say, right? If you ignored all of the noise, what are
Yeah.
the things that you would do? And how do we take your skills, your experiences, your accomplishments, and package that into where you want to go? So, where you've gone, where you've been, what you've done, and then where you want to go are the two places that I start, because I often find that the clarity piece isn't always that we aren't clear. Sometimes it's this we're afraid to be clear, because we don't think it's possible. And so
Right.
sometimes it's getting through those limiting beliefs and knowing that it is possible, and not just possible, it's possible for me. So making it personal, like, I believe in you, Jennifer, but I also have to believe in me. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That is so good.
Thank
I
you.
love the C's too. Easy to remember. And
Yes.
um, what do you love about social work?
Oh my gosh. I love, love, love the diversity in social work. I am always excited, especially when I am working with social work interns, social work students, really about the possibilities and the opportunities. I think that we do ourselves a disservice when we try to confine social work to clinical work or therapeutic work only, or child welfare or hospital social work, maybe school social work every now and again, because it's so vast. There's so many things you can do with your social work degree. And so I like to say two things, right? Your social work skills are high income skills, and your social work skills are highly transferable skills because they're people skills, they're human behavior skills, the communication, the boundaries, the problem solving, being able to connect people together and collaborate. All of those skills are valuable skills, and you learn those in your social work profession, in your social work education, and they will take you through a lifetime. So,
Yeah. And often we take those for granted.
we do take it for granted. We think that it's average, normal, right?
Right.
But it's really not. When, I've worked in lots of multidisciplinary teams, and I see the way social workers think and problem solve and um, bring clients' needs to the table in a way that other professions may not. And that's not a slight, that's just who we are and what we do. And so those skills are valuable across industries. Their skills are valuable across, professions. I've done all kinds of things, right, with my
Yeah.
social work degree. We know multiple social workers in everything from corporate social work to military social work. There are social workers who are entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurship is more than private practice. You and I are career coaches. So
Yeah.
that possibility in the field of social work, that diversity in the field of social work, is actually what I love. And I will stand on the mountaintops and yell it, right? That there is so much diversity in social work that you really don't have to leave to the profession. You don't have to leave the profession to earn good money. You don't have to leave the profession if you're feeling a little burned out. You don't have to leave the profession if you want to travel the world, right? You can do all of those things as a social worker.
And for those of y'all viewers who don't follow Nicki Sanders on LinkedIn, she does stand on a mountaintop
Yeah.
every day.
Yes.
And I learn things every day from you. So
Thank you.
I'll have that link at the end of the show.
Great. Awesome.
And what about so we talked about what you love. So of course we have to do the flip side. What are
Yes.
some of the things down in the profession?
So I think it's two sides of the same coin, quite honestly. This kind of old traditional narrow view of social work, as the world is changing, as our generations are changing, right? We're losing good social workers to this narrow view of social work. This idea that, we should be in it for the outcome and not the income. People are saying, but why should I struggle? I don't need to struggle financially in order to do good in the world. And you don't have to struggle as a social worker. I think that old traditional narrow view says only these things are social work, but we learned, right, in undergraduate that there's meso, macro, and micro social work. It's not just clinical social work, that all of those things are social work. And that division, I think, hurts the profession and hurts social workers the most. But also there are people who are being turned away from social work who would make amazing social workers, or people who are getting burned out and leaving the profession who would be amazing social workers. And so clients are losing and the profession is losing. And so again, there's so much opportunity, there's so much diversity. We can social work differently. There's so many opportunities that we can all do different things, but our work collectively impacts the world in a powerful way.
Yeah, and I think that even other industries are beginning to see our value more
Yes.
than like I've seen so many of our graduates and clients who are taking these amazing jobs because they had such diligence,
Yeah.
but and they were welcome in these roles. But for the most part, most of us think we can't do it. It's
Right.
like they just got lucky, or how, they must have known somebody. So I do sometimes I think that the rest of the world believes in us more than we do.
Yes. Yes, that's very true. Those skills are highly transferable. Everything from employee assistance programs, corporate social responsibility, right? Social workers have been working in teams and collaborating and bringing organizations together and working on organizational culture for decades and decades.
Right.
We've been providing support and resources and programming and getting things out into the community for decades and decades. And we don't have to do that in that narrow nonprofit box.
Right.
There's so many other ways that we can contribute, and those skills really allow us to have an advantage. We really do have an advantage in those areas.
I remember a couple of years ago, well, no, it was before COVID, but I went to the sports and social work conference,
Yes.
and there was an exhibitor, and I was telling my sons who were younger at the time that I was at a sports and social work conference, and they were saying, "What? That doesn't exist. I never heard of a social worker,
Yeah.
sports stuff." And then I said, "Well, I'm about to head over to the exhibit area where there's a veterinarian social work
Yeah.
program." And they were like, "Get out, mom."
Yeah.
So we do, and all those opportunities are available to us.
All those opportunities are available.
You're just so great at being able to identify the transferable skills in clients and your students and teach them how to apply those to the different industries that we were talking about.
And I love it. I really do love it.
It's like a puzzle, right?
It
It's like,
is connecting those dots and putting those right pieces together. But they do all fit. And I think that sometimes we envision success as being straight and narrow, and no one's success is straight and narrow, right? There are lots of twists and turns and curves. And when we prepare students and ourselves, knowing that it's okay that we take that windy path, and that our path is our own unique path. What worked for you may not have worked for me. What worked for my sister may not work for her, colleague.
yeah.
Then we can really start to embrace all of who we are without guilt or shame, actually.
Um, so I want to go a little deeper into
Yeah.
this. Have you yourself ever struggled financially as a social worker?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I did not realize how much that idea of you can't make a lot of money in social work, or do the work that you love, was embedded kind of in my thought process. And so what I started saying to myself is social workers don't take a vow of poverty, right? Because I didn't take a vow of poverty. And in saying that, I started saying, but these skills are high income skills, and I'm paying for this education, and I deserve to be paid well for my expertise and my experience. But, those student loan deferments, right? There's a certain income level you have to be at, right? To qualify for those deferments. There were things that I was not able to do because I was doing work that I loved, but I was not being paid well to do that work. And it doesn't make you a better social worker when you're struggling financially. I think there has been a tendency to shame people who are saying, but I want to earn a lot of money. And truthfully, we can do more good in the world when more good people have money, right? So it's not a bad thing for good people, good social workers, to have a lot of money, because we're giving anyway. And so with that financial struggle, when you kind of start to come out of it, you realize how limited your thinking was, how you were kind of stuck. You may have been a few steps ahead of your clients, but you can't perform at your best when you're struggling financially if you're worrying about, your own bills being paid, or am I going to save for my own retirement when I'm helping someone else save for retirement? And so that financial struggle was really a direct result of the idea of doing work that I love and not expecting to be paid well to do it. Yeah.
That's so good. Yeah. Just not feeling like y- you should get paid because you love what you're doing,
Yeah.
and that You can't love what you're doing and get paid for that.
Yes, which is such a horrible misconception, and I hope we stop perpetuating that myth, right? Because you can be paid well to do work that you love, and we don't have to struggle. And there's so many ways to use our social work degrees. Um, when I was in undergrad, I was working in a federal government agency, and I left that agency when I went to do my internship, which was not a problem. I do believe that the path that I followed was the path that was for me. It took me where I needed to go. But what I didn't know at that time as a 21, 22-year old is that I could have applied for another job in the federal government. So for instance, with Department of Health and Human Services, I was not aware of all of the ways that even government agencies hire social workers, even then 20 plus years ago and today. It's not just the Veterans Administration, that hires social workers. There's so many government agencies that need social workers.
Yeah. I was just thinking too about, just when you're an intern and you're just, focused on getting that
Yeah.
internship and not really realizing about the different opportunities. And I've kind of seen it on the flip side where a lot of interns will just hope that they get offered a position
Mhm.
at the internship so that they don't even have to look for a job.
Right.
And then limiting themselves from so many opportunities,
Yeah.
oftentimes waiting for their field supervisor to write the job description. And then, they don't even have any opportunities to make a counter offer.
Yes.
I'm really glad you brought that up, your personal story of the
Yeah.
internship process, because I do think that within that process, we tend to miss a lot of opportunities.
Yes, absolutely. And I've supervised lots of interns, and of course working with students. And so what I have made a very intentional effort to empower my interns and students to do is take ownership of their career in that internship. So that means that you're creating our supervision agenda, that you are deciding what the project is that you're going to take ownership of. Because I make sure that there is a capstone project, whatever that looks like, that they're taking responsibility for something from beginning to end. And that thing is something that is related to where they think they want to go. So they're kind of forced into making a decision, right? Where do you think you want to go and how can I help you get there? Because this is about more than getting a credit. This is an educational work experience. And so with my interns, they turn in their resume in the beginning, and then we go over their resume in the end before they leave so that we can get them on the path to where they want to go. So I don't allow them to sit and wait, but I know that other internship supervisors don't have that skill set or that mindset or even the time
Right.
necessarily to do all of those things. And so again, it is about empowering students to really take ownership of their careers while they're students and emerging leaders, right?
Yeah.
So I'm passionate about working with women in leadership, but I definitely consider students emerging leaders. They are the next generation of social workers.
Nikki, those students that have you are so lucky.
I love being with them. I really do. I really do. Yeah.
Um, One of the areas of your expertise that really compelled me to want to speak with you was working in toxic work environments.
Yes.
And, the fact that you have been brave enough to switch jobs
Yeah.
tells me that you have some experience in that.
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about that, about, burnout and compassion?
Absolutely. Yeah. So absolutely. So the job that I call my best and worst job, right? My best because I absolutely loved it. It's the longest job I've had in my career ever, and the longest job I will have. But I loved it. And I loved it so much that the more I gave to the job, the more I grew the programs, the more I dedicated to the work, the more I kind of lost myself in it. So I say best job because of that, but worse because I really did kind of lose myself. And it doesn't, it's a gradual process, right? So, it started with, you turn your phone off at 5 o'clock. Well, maybe I'll send that email at 7, or I can check my email at 9. Um, and moving through that process, it was not this is what happened today. It was a gradual process. Some things started subtly. Um, Unrealistic expectations. Sometimes it was unrealistic expectations. And we're social workers, right? So you tell me you want this thing, then it's up to me to figure out how to get you that thing. Um, if you said, we do this thing, my brain is saying, if we're operating in integrity, I have to make what you said true, right? Like, I can't be a part of something that's not true. So I need to make what you said true. And so those unrealistic expectations, not having those boundaries, not having people who understood the direct day-to-day work. But the truth is, all of the toxicity was not about management or leadership. It was also the things that were happening on the outside that were impacting the organization. So being, at the beginning of, that first recession around 2008, funders, taking funds away or adding unrealistic requirements in order to keep funding. A school system or school systems, not just one, that were really toxic for the young people that we were working with. And so sometimes it started to feel like we were, and I use this phrase, putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, right? Like we were trying to do so much with so little that all of the toxicity was not in the organization. It was also us trying to provide for our clients in the best way and taking those burdens on. And so I had staff, there were political things happening that were impacting our work, but also impacting my staff directly. The staff was growing. And so what I started to feel for me is, I had staff I could see how it was impacting them, panic attacks, absences, those kinds of things. And because I was supervising such a large team, um, all of the one-on-ones that I had with them, I would take all of their stuff in. And so I started to be a little short, a little less patient, got to
Right.
work a little bit later, right? Those kinds of things. And then truthfully, I woke up one day and I was sad. And I was like, this is a strange feeling, right? Because I had mastered being angry. I was angry at the things that were forcing us to have to perform in this way. And I was angry that, our clients had to experience these specific things. So I had mastered anger, right?
Wow.
Sadness was different. I was like, what is this?
Wow.
I don't really know what this is. And so what I really try to tell social workers is social work, you know, it, professional burnout is not a rites of passage for social workers, right? And so the things that we learned in social work school, put your client first, be resourceful, all of those things are the things that actually helped me get myself out of that place. So I went back to everything we learned in social work school. I went back to my boundaries. I went back to supervision. I went and got outside supervision for myself, so that I could better support my team. I went and got someone who could do clinical supervision, group supervision with my staff. We sat down as a team and collaborated and said, what can we do to help ourselves and what can we do to help these young people? We need to go deeper, not wider. So all of the things that I learned in social work school were the things that helped me get out of that place, the being able to advocate for myself. I was advocating for my clients and my staff directly. And if I'm being truthful, I was not leading by the best example because I was saying to my staff, we're going to practice self-care, and I would give them a mental health day, but I wouldn't take a mental health day. I would say, turn your phone off at 6 o'clock, but I wouldn't turn my phone off at 6 o'clock. I would say, if I send you an email at 1 a.m., please don't answer it. But why am I sending an email at 1 a.m., right? And so I had to go back and say, I need to lead by example. And for me, I realized that I was no longer growing. I was just putting out fires. And so for me, the letter of resignation really was the ultimate self-care. I needed to go for myself instead of staying for my team. And that's what a lot of social workers do. What's going to happen to our clients? What's going to happen to our teams? But I really had to prioritize my own self-care and myself. And that meant I needed to leave a place that I loved.
So it seems like the workplace was toxic, both because of external and internal
Yes.
factors. How would you identify people that are toxic?
Yes.
And
Um,
and how would you maybe, identify that in advance? Or what if you find yourself working with someone that all of a sudden becomes toxic?
oh, so two parts to that. I don't know that anyone all of a sudden becomes toxic, right? I think that they're toxic. Some people can hide it for a little while, but before it's full on, they've been like dropping some things along the way.
So you
So I think,
your intuition on that.
yeah, definitely. And in in truth, um, I knew very early on, but I stayed there 11 years, right? Um, so that was also about me and really looking at, oh my gosh, well, I have a mortgage now, or there were those kinds of things again that were also at play even externally. But in terms of, you know, toxic people, whether that is your colleague, whether that is your supervisor, whether that is your supervisor, I think the first thing is the boundaries, right? So, and it could be physical space, but it could also be an expectation or the language that someone uses to describe you or their relationship to you, or even themselves, right? If someone is elevating themselves to a level where you're unequal and you see that, you feel that, that's one piece. I think the unrealistic expectations.
Can you
Yeah,
can you give us an example of that?
absolutely, absolutely. So I think that we've had, and I've been on both sides of the interview table, right? So when people have said things to me, like, um, well, what are you going to do? Asking me, what am I going to do in 5 years? That's a regular question. But if they're asking me that and it sounds like, well, you're never going to get to where I am, right? Like I'm here and there's so much that you have to do to get to where I am. I've heard people say things like, well, I mean, you can't talk to the CEO like that, and I'm saying, well, you shouldn't talk to anyone like that, right? It's not about titles, right? It's not about titles. It's not about positions. This hierarchy, we're going to treat human beings like human beings and respect everyone because they're a human being. And so, I've had people ask me questions, somewhat maybe illegal interview questions, maybe not, but try to find out. They know enough to know that you can't ask questions like, are you married? Do you have children? And so they'll phrase questions where you can tell they're trying to get at, do you have other obligations that are going to prevent you from being available to me when I need you to be available to me, right? And I've had those kinds of questions as well. I've been on a first interview and someone said, well, do you have any vacation planned? And I was like, well, that was an odd question for a first interview. That was odd. So clearly vacation is a problem here. So I think sometimes we have to trust our own instincts because people tell you who they are without telling you who they are because they understand that some of those things they just can't say or someone, scripted them, right? Not to say those certain things. And so those boundaries, when you look at job descriptions and, if people say I work fast-paced environment, you have to be entrepreneurial, all of those things. I'm like, well, is it chaos or is it busy, because chaos and busy are two different things.
Yeah.
Um, so I think looking for clear communication as well. If someone can't communicate to me what I'm going to be doing or what their expectations of me are, um, then I think that that is a problem. If it is someone who um, you can see that they are, I've had people, say, this is what I do, this is what I need you to do. And I'm like, well, those two things kind of don't go together.
Right.
That's kind of not in my job description. And that doesn't mean that I only do what's in my job description, right? So I am definitely a great employee, right? Um, but in truth, the things that made me a great employee also can make me a not so great employee, because I am going to use my advocacy skills. I'm advocating for myself, I'm advocating for my team, I'm advocating for my clients. Social work 101, right? Documentation. If you didn't document it, it didn't happen. I am
Right.
the employee who documents everything, right? So I document everything. So I use those social work skills, and oftentimes we use them almost instinctively, and we don't realize that we're really using our social work skills. Um, and so I've taken some time to sit back and think, like, no, this is, and so I say that to my students, my clients, like, go back to what you learned. Have you documented anything? Did you advocate? Did you make a clear ask? How are you communicating? All of those things in a toxic work environment are so, so, so important, because if you stay in that, it will change you, right? It changes you. You start to doubt yourself. You start to doubt your skills. You're like, you're exhausted. And so you don't have the fight necessarily to get yourself out of this place. Oftentimes it's like that cycle of abuse.
Right.
So we have this rage applying, right?
Yeah.
So something happens, we get angry, we apply to a bunch of jobs, and then a week or two later, things calm down, and then we let it go on, and that
Right.
cycle can continue.
Yeah. I feel like it's almost, like gaslighting when that
Yes,
begins to happen. And your
yes,
analogy of a cycle of abuse is spot on. And again, you can't read the label when you're in
right.
the.
Yes, yeah,
Um, so what advice would you give? You gave a lot of great advice as far as like documentation and clear communication. But I think everybody remembers that one instance when it happens, and then you're like, uh-oh, right? And
right.
what do you have any advice, for that when, that one instance when you believe that maybe you're dealing with a toxic person or in a toxic work environment?
Yes. Um, and I should say, getting out of that toxic work environment does not mean that I did not go into another toxic work environment. And so I think that we almost have to constantly be aware. And if we haven't resolved what the thing was that kept us in the first one, it's very easy to go into another one. And yes, we want to grant ourselves grace and we want to go inward. Um, but I think, you know, when I when I look back, um, there were many things. I've never regretted following my intuition, right? So let me start there, right? In both of these instances, if I had gone with my first instinct, I would have saved myself a lot of headache. Um, and so I think, oftentimes we think, I'll just go to HR. Well, truthfully, HR is really not for the employee. HR really is for the organization, and they're processing things in place. But especially in a small nonprofit, oftentimes the CEO or executive director is supervising the HR specialist. Um, and so I think that we have to really, really, really think about what the outcome is that we want, and what we're able and willing to accept. Um, because sometimes you have to walk away without having a backup plan. Um, and no, it may not be financially responsible, right? But it's mentally what you need to do, because if you're constantly in survival mode, you really can't thrive. You're just trying to make it through the day. And so I would say for someone who, sees the, hot lid about to blow off, or it has exploded, um, to really don't blame yourself. I think that's the first thing.
Right.
Because I would be like, how did I get here? Right. You start to blame yourself, and that's what it makes you question you. Um, so I would definitely say know that you are not to blame, but also to get the support and resources that you need. And those may be outside of the workplace, whether that is a professional organization that, works with employee issues, or whether that is your own support system. Um, and to come up with a plan, maybe a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. If this happens, I need to do this. Can I stay for 2 weeks? Do I need to stay until I reach my anniversary date? Well, what happens if they terminate me because I complained? What do I do next? And I think thinking of all of those scenarios, not in a way that you're afraid, but in a way that you're prepared, um, is valuable and helpful. But knowing that it's really not you. It really is not you. That oftentimes it is other people's insecurities, other people's lack of professional experience or leadership skills. Sometimes it is, just the environment that that person is in, and they're afraid for their own job, and so they're putting that, pressure on you. But always knowing that you have the right to walk away, that you have the right to be treated with respect and dignity, that no one should be able to intimidate you or bully you or disrespect you because they're your supervisor or because they control your paycheck, um, and that you are important and you're valuable. Yeah.
I think we could talk about this for hours. Um, we're almost out of time, and I want to be full of your time as well. I know you're a busy lady.
Thank you.
But I do want to ask kind of a two-part question.
Okay.
Finish up. So as a career coach, what advice, what's one nugget or piece of advice that you share with all your clients, regardless of what level they're at?
Right.
And what advice would you share to recent grads?
Awesome. Yes. So in many ways, it's the same advice. So number one is always define social work career success on your own terms. What you want to do is for you. There's no shame. There's no guilt. It's not impossible. Like you said, there's sports social work. There's someone, who was hired by the NFL, a few years ago. 10 years ago, we wouldn't have thought that that was possible. We have financial social work now. So define social work career success on your own terms. And that means you have to ignore the noise. You need to kind of put blinders on and not listen to people or compare yourself to other people. And so that is like the staple. That is number one. What does success mean to you? So I share that definitely with clients of all stages. But for students, the thing that I want recent graduates and students to remember is there are so many opportunities and possibilities in social work. Don't be limited to just the thing that you heard. For most of us, we go into social work because we want to help people, right? But what people and how do we want to help them? So know that the opportunities and possibilities in social work are vast. And if you try it and you don't like it, just try something else. It's okay. Just try something else.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Nikki. And I just want to again reiterate to the audience, we'll have Nikki's website and more information about her and the services she provides, but also follow her on LinkedIn. Nikki does a video almost every day.
I try. Yeah.
And they're very uplifting. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I look forward to continuing our colleague relationship and
Yes.
friendship in the future.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed talking to you. I love this opportunity. I'm grateful for this opportunity. And again, to your viewers, absolutely connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to be a support and resources and just connect and grow the social work profession.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.